really excited to bring you the upcoming interview with a very special guest. You'll hear her discussing all the great and courageous work that she is currently engaged in. And if you feel inspired to help her continue these efforts, please consider making a donation earmarked for her projects. Or you can give a general donation that will support the wider movement in Myanmar. Our ongoing support has been so very helpful and appreciated by many Burmese struggling during these dark days. Simply go to insightmyanmar.org/donation to contribute today. Or stay tuned at the end of the episode to hear more options. Now, let's hear from that guest herself.
The greatest traitors to the nation are the cowards with the loudest silence.
I'm pleased to welcome back to Insight Myanmar podcast Thiri, who spoke to us last year and is going to be rejoining us to give an overview and update both on a personal level as well as where the movement's at. So Thiri, thanks so much for coming back here at Insight Myanmar podcast.
Hello, Joy. Yeah, thank you so much for having me again in this podcast, and really nice to talk to you again.
Yeah, so I think it's probably good to start off with where you're at personally, because as we just talked before the interview, we were recalling the previous one last year, which I'd highly recommend listeners to hear. It's gotten really quite a bit of feedback in that time in the past year. Number 49 is the episode for those who want to go back and hear it. And that interview left off with you, Thiri, describing how you had the ability to leave the country, but you were choosing to stay at that time. And in the past year, your life path has taken you in a slightly different direction than you were thinking at the time. So why don't you start us off by just telling us where you're at and how you got there?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, going back like a year ago. So when I was talking on this podcast, I was pretty sure that I didn't want to leave the country, and I want to stick with my own people, and mainly because of my friends, and also for the hope and solidarity, even though I couldn't really work because that was important that time. But I couldn't work for another 9 months, a little over 9 months. So that actually impacted me at the professional level, and I want also like personal level. And I just feel like, yes, hope and solidarity is important to be here, but also there may be something that I can do if I am outside of the country. Because the situation was that after the podcast, the situation is getting worse, especially in the city, and more tighter security control and more military presence on the streets. And I live with fear, like I couldn't sleep at night for many nights, that because there are more and more arrests at nighttime, and they would come, and they would come to our neighbors, and they would come into our neighborhoods and like arrest people. And so I have some kind of the mental situation is that I didn't sleep at night, and I only sleep when I see the light coming, like maybe like 6 a.m. and something, because even though it doesn't mean that military will not come and arrest us in the daytime, but at least some kind of relax. Okay, one day is gone, one night is gone, that they're not going to come for me, they're not going to come for anybody in my neighborhood. So the situation is more and more stressful. And also they will also personally, there were 2 times in 2 different houses that I live, 2 neighborhood that I live. The soldier would come and they would come and target the people who were banging pots and pan. And at other time they were there was one time just before I left the country, they have a new police outpost right under my apartment. It has nothing to do with me, but they were providing the security for the officer from the embassy,
Mhm.
so Cambodian embassy, and so they block the way, and it's really limited my ability to function in my daily life, because I don't feel safe
Mhm.
at all going in front of the police or any security forces, because they have the impunity and they can do whatever they want to do. And I am subconsciously caring about what I wear or like what I do. And because the area where they base is right where we go and throw the trash bin, where we throw the trash, and also where we
Mhm.
go to the market. So we have to go past them, and I don't feel safe at all. One,
Mhm.
younger, and also I'm a woman. So because they are there, and the sit at the Myanmar military, these guys, the security forces, they are
Mhm.
conservative. And so when they see me like wearing, even like as a woman, even though I don't do any, even though my phone can be clean, but I was worried, what if I wear shorts and they're gonna come and stop me and they may harass me, or like if I wear the mask or if I wear hat, I have to be very careful in every day, whatever I do, even though they may or may not harass me, but I don't feel safe because there are guns in my neighborhood
Mhm.
and they're there. So I cannot really stand that fear anymore. And that fear actually limit my way of thinking, and also I just couldn't live in constant fear and knowing that a lot of anything could happen to me. And the fact that they were very close to me, I couldn't talk on the phone. And I feel like my space is being invaded, and I have to live with constant fear everywhere that I go. Like when I go to work, when I go to downtown, I have to hide my phone and I have to clean up the thing. That was all the kind of unnecessary stress. And then we heard the story about they stopped the car, and I have experienced myself that they stopped the car and check and everything. So a lot of fears and a lot of military presence, the security presence in town, that really just drain me, and that really impact my ability to work. And at some point, I even got to the point that I wanted to sleep, so I drink a lot so that I can sleep. But I would drink until in the morning, and then so that I can get a whole day's sleep. So I wasn't living in a healthy living condition, and I also self doubt about myself, my capacities, and also like impacting my self esteem, that I feel completely useless, that I cannot contribute anything back to my society and back to my friends, and constantly living in fear. So I cannot stand that anymore, and I don't feel like it was a healthy living situation, physically and mentally. And I just like to explore more, what can I do outside. And on top of that, a lot of my friends by that time, most of them have already, more and more friends go to the jungle and join the resistance movement, or more and more friends leaving the country, and or some friends being in jail. So I where whereabout of me doesn't really matter at this point, and I just like to see what are the things outside that I can do. And so I decided to leave the country, but it was a very heavy decision, because the day I left was the February 2nd of 9 a.m., February 2nd of 2022, which is exactly a year after the coup. So the day before February 1st, we have a silent strikes in town. So my town is Yangon, the city. It was empty and it was dead. It was, we were showing the solidarity with the silent strikes. And that was my last memories of home. And the next day, I was flying out of the country. But then until that point, I wasn't sure whether I actually wanted to leave. So I didn't happen to pack until the 1st of February of 2022. And that even though my flight is the morning flight the next day. So even for the morning flight, that time we have to take the CPR test, the COVID test. So if you have a COVID, you cannot get on the plane. So I was low-key wishing that I had COVID, and then I may not even need to get on the plane, so that it won't be me. It's just the universe deciding me that, okay, you shouldn't leave the country and you are supposed to stay. So because I don't even have a capacity to think whether I should leave or not, because a lot of the day was like, okay, one day I want to leave, one day I want to stay. And up to that point, I got to the airport and I was like, wait, I wish I have COVID, and then it wouldn't my fault not to leave the country. It would be just the universe wanted me to be here, be with my people, be in the country. So I was low-key wishing, but luckily I didn't get it. I didn't get COVID. I got COVID negative, so I got on the plane. So even at the transit airport, I have a 12-hour layover in one airport, and it was still close to the country. I was thinking like, I just got back because I still have time to go back. So for that 12 hours, I wasn't really make up my mind that I actually wanted to leave. But anyway, I could get out of the country. And when I got out, when I actually got to my final destination, I made my mind like, okay, that's it. So the universe wanted me to be somewhere else. So I would just be wherever the universe wants me to be. It sounds silly, but with the capacity that a lot of things going on, I just couldn't make the decision of myself, and I don't want to be guilty of not leaving and of leaving. So that was the whole process, and it was such an experience, and I didn't even want to think about it the whole flight time. So I slept a lot. I took the sleeping pill and I slept through the time, so that I don't need to think about that I have already left the country. And yeah, that was the recap of why I leave the country, and the process of getting out of the country.
So in leaving the country, it's not just the emotional and psychological toll, but you're also moving from a society that is very far from free to a society that's more or less free. And not just contrasting free and unfree societies, but contrasting a society you're coming from, which is violent, unpredictable, no safety, no security anywhere. You can't even sleep at night, et cetera, all the risks that you're under, all the fear, the danger, everything else, to going to a place where those really aren't concerns, and it's a normal country functioning in whatever normal is. Of course, no place is perfect, but you don't have these same concerns of terror and having to control everything you do and how you act and who you associate with and what you say and everything else. So, do you recall anything about that initial adjustment as you were physically in a safer place, but perhaps mentally or emotionally or psychologically not quite understanding that and still holding the remnants of what that last year of terror has been? Do you recall anything about that transition?
Yes, the thing is, away from home, I this I just I have been to the foreign country. I live abroad, but this time is different because this time because I don't know when I will be or can be able to go back once I leave. Even though I told my friends that, hey, I told myself that, oh, I will be coming back. It just like get some fresh air and I will be coming back. But in my mind, I know that it's not that possible because once I leave the country, I'm going to
Mhm.
start working and I'm going to involve more, and then lesser chance for me to go home with more works and everything. So it is emotionally very difficult because it's about, like it's about losing home, and it's like we're like plants that is taken out from the soil because home is land. It's not about the society itself. It's all together. Even if everyone in the country
Mhm.
move to a certain place, and let's call it home, let's call it Myanmar, because all my families and everybody is here, it will never be the same because land is
Mhm.
very important. Land
Mhm.
is the memories. A lot of the things. I just not just physical bodies. We're not moving physical body. It's just there are a lot of attachment. There are a lot of memories, a lot of stories, and a lot of things happening on that land. But knowing that our home disappear,
Mhm.
even if we go back to the same land
Mhm.
with the same society, it won't be the same.
Mhm.
It it will never be the same. So a lot of before that, since before that point, I really didn't understand the feeling of
Mhm.
being an exile, even though I am still not an exile. I still have a chance to go back if I want to because I'm not having any direct security risks yet. So I can go back if I want to. But
Mhm.
the thing is, you are moving from one place, human and attachment and memories and friends and little things. It all matters, but we are just taken out from our own place, somewhere familiar place because of the violence perpetrated on us to our home. So it is very difficult, and on top of that, there was this kind of guilty feeling, especially after I left. Things are I heard things are getting worse with the situation of not having electricity.
Right.
I couldn't talk to my family all the time because of the day and night difference, and also they have a power cut, and the Wi-Fi conditions and everything. Things are getting worse, and given the economy down for and security and everything,
Mhm.
I just feel part of me feel like, oh my God, am I being selfish to leave all of them like that? And here I am in a comfortable place and safer. I can sleep well, but they may not be able to do that. So there were a lot of transition. It was some of the day I just feel I know I shouldn't be guilty because the point is that I have to continue working. So all I can say is that since I left, my soul is not there. it's not here with me. Something is missing.
Mhm.
And I don't know what that is, but also something is missing. But it doesn't mean that I'm not happy or anything here where I am now. But I, it will never be the same. And also, the situation that I ended up here is not like what I imagined. Because as somebody who can go abroad and settle abroad, with because of my professional background or because of my connection, this is not how I wanted to come. The process matter, and that's also impact me as well. And because when I come back to my friends, I don't want to share another tra- you know, the tragedy and the story of tragedy or anything.
Mm.
I just want to tell like, oh yeah, here's my adventure. Haha, this what happened during the pandemic and all the kind of catch up, but not in a way that, hey, I have to leave the country because our country screw up again.
Yeah.
So the process is very, very important, and also feeling like losing home. It will never be the same, and my family is still there, and I don't know how and when I am gonna see them. And while I'm here, one of my aunts and uncle died, passed away with health situation,
Mm.
and I can see them, and I don't know. And a lot of my friends, I may not be able to see them again. So it's just that physically safe and everything is better off here, but still, it's not necessarily guilt, but it's also feel like emptiness in me that just I don't think that will ever be recovered. Even if I can go back home at some point, it will never be the same.
Yeah, yeah. As you're saying that, I'm recalling how this just the difference between those who are affected and impacted by the terror going on in Myanmar and those that are not so much. And I, personally speaking, I'm enormously privileged in terms of what ability I have in being over. I was stuck over here when the pandemic broke, even though I was basically living there before then, but was out of the country when the pandemic broke. So I was stuck here when the coup happened. And even if I had been there, there's obviously I have a lot of privileges that those in the country don't have. And yet, when the coup broke, I was so devastated and so affected, and was living in this other reality. And I remember one of my very, very close friends that was in the US was later confided in me several months later that he he was being quite compassionate at the beginning when I wasn't really returning his messages like I usually do, and wasn't asking about his life, and was slow on everything, and sometimes out of touch or not answering questions for long periods of time. And he later said that it was starting to test his patience, and that he had given me this kind of buffer, knowing how terrible this was and how I was impacted in helping the situation. But it reached a point where it was just getting harder on him for the friendship. And we're very close, so we talked it through, and we were both trying to explain our different sides. And at one point, I said something to him that really was a light bulb going off, and that's why I share this whole story here. Is that this one way of phrasing it really stood out in trying to represent what it's like for those coming from Myanmar, in Myanmar, with deep connections with Burmese people or the country in one way or another. And the distinction between that group and those that are virtually living untouched lives that barely even know this is going on. I said to him something like, well, at the end of these stream of conversations, I put it in such a way of like, well, I guess for me, I'm sorry, but it's just like World War II is happening, and I don't really know how to apologize for World War II impacting my life the way it is, and you not having to face it. And that immediately lit him up into like, oh my God. And he'd been following Myanmar. This was not new for him, but it was somehow put in that terms because World War II was such a cataclysmic event that wherever you were living, or most places you were living, your life was just irrevocably changed. There was nothing you could do about it. You were just suddenly plummeted into a new reality that you had to face and confront. And even though, as I go on to say and remind, I was living in such privilege and such and not facing nearly what people in Myanmar are facing. But what I was facing was so much further than what he was. That how I was being impacted was so far beyond how his life was still continuing on a normal course, that kind of awoke him to the fact that I was now living in World War II. This was a reality we both had to accept and somehow manage our friendship going forward with that understanding and that kind of cataclysmic change that I was in, where his life was, if you want to take the metaphor further, was the sunny American 1950s, and that was our divergence, and so I think of that with you and with coming from actually being in Myanmar and being in situations of such unsafety and danger and fear, and then trying to coming out of World War II, if you want to carry that analogy, and then physically coming out of it, but mentally and with your friends and family and the country itself, that reality of the conflict being so real and present.
Yeah. So before about this multiple reality, before talking about my adjustment here, I also want to bring you back to where I was in the country. So even in the country, I would admit that my situation is not as bad as other people. I still have my own life. Yes, we have a military presence and everything, but still, I would operate my life in a certain way. It's not normal, but it's more like a new normal way of engagement. I would hang out with my friends. I would go, and I would sometimes travel, and I would live, because when I cannot die, I would live. So but there are times that we would laugh, there are times that we would sing, and there were time that we were just like getting drunk and doing crazies and everything. I did a lot of the things even in the country. But if you may see more and more people acting like normal, walking on the streets and celebrating or whatever, just acting they were running their normal daily life. So I was running my normal daily, trying to be living, even when I was in the country, even though in the middle of all the tragedy. I just want people to understand everywhere there is a multiple truth, multiple faces, even in a conflict. So we are not the victim. So I am not the victim. So yeah, I will be laughing and I will be doing all like hanging out, friends and everything. But when you see the picture of us like this, it it also doesn't discount the the level and intensity of the tragedy itself. It just that's another face of us. And so I just want to admit that even in the country, my life is not like miserable every day. There were days very bad, especially nighttime. They were very bad because I couldn't sleep. But at the same time, there were days that I functioned as a normal human being and trying to be like normal, even though it's not normal, like more like new normal. So everything that we do have a multiple truth. So I just want to emphasize, because usually in terms of the people fleeing the country or people in a conflict society, and those people who have never been living in this conflict society or who have never experienced this, they have a certain image of us. They of the people in a conflict society, like, oh, they must be poor, they must be crying, and when they see us laughing, when they see us making jokes, they feel like frustrated. They were like, oh, maybe the suffering
Right.
is not even real because they are laughing, which is not true, because those
Mm-hmm.
are two different
Mm-hmm.
things. We are just like you guys, just like
Mm-hmm.
people who are in a peaceful situation, because even though things are hard, we don't cry every day, and because we need to live. So it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
really discount our suffering or anything, just because we are trying to live our life. So that's one thing I just want to emphasize. So because I want to admit that my life is not that not that horrible, even though it is very bad. But again, I'm way more privileged than a lot of people, a lot of my friends who are living in the jungle, eating only banana stem and running away from the shellings and everything. But even then, there were times that they smile and they make jokes and they sing and they perform, whatever. So I just want to make sure that people have make sure that we have a multiple phases in the way of living a conflict, not just single storytelling. Like, oh, if you're in this conflict, you have to be miserable. That's not the case. So I just want to
Right.
that I'm not like I wasn't like this, and even though there's a security risk, but still I can navigate. I could navigate it if I wanted to live in the country. But still, that doesn't discount my suffering or my mental well-beings and everything. So that's one thing. So the same thing when I come here, people who doesn't know the level and intensity of our suffering, it's it in the way trauma works. It's not just you are sad all the time. It's just some trigger. And so for me here, because I cannot dine, and also I cannot go back home. I have to make anywhere I come as home. I have to create a new space for me to be safe, for me to be mentally safe, and for me to be comfortable, and for me to make friends. So I'm living, but again, the way trauma works is not like I'm constantly sad or constantly um, feeling bad or feeling guilty. It just here and there, some incidents come in, some trigger come in, it just kicked in. And so my way of adjusting for now, I've been here for a while, so there were time that I don't feel anything at all, and I was numb, and I don't remember a lot of the things happened in the past years. My memories, I've been losing a lot of the memories, that some of the things I just feel like, oh, it's been forever. Like, for example, the memories of COVID, the pandemic, I don't recall it because I feel like it's forever ago. And the coup itself, some of the memories I forgot, and 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 sometimes I forgot some people are gone, and I would still think that they're alive or they're around. I will like, oh yeah, we should talk to this person. Oh yeah, let's talk to like my grandma, for example. My grandma and my dad already passed away, but sometimes I forgot that I was like, okay, yeah, I can ask grandma. Or when I call my mom, I was like, how's grandma doing and something. So things are more like scattered for me since I got here. So yeah, but most of the day I'm fine. I'm like, I live my life and I just do and I operate at normal. But some of the day, some trigger come in and I really melt down and I let myself go and I let myself cry, and sometimes I will left. I just don't hold myself to be strong or anything. I let myself to be vulnerable at any point because I want to live and I feel like I need to live. So that's how I am adjusting. And the analogy of World War II and everything, yeah, I mean, because I don't experience this, I cannot really draw a parallel or comparison to it. But my experience itself is that I want to admit that I am not unhappy every day. There were days that I'm extremely happy and I enjoy my time, but there were days that I don't feel good at all. And there were days that I am extremely guilty. There were days that I feel like, well, yes, I need to live. So it's a lot of up and down journey. And I am trying to catch up with every day. But all I can do is that I am living every day. I relive again and again every day. So that's how I have been adjusting, if it makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, it does. And I just have one more question on this before we broaden out and take a wider view of what's been going on overall in Myanmar. Just for many people that, especially younger people such as yourself, that when this coup hit, it was so few people had lived through anything like this in Myanmar. There was an institutional memory of previous generations and things people had been told that sometimes even the younger generation was doubtful of, I'm told, because they hadn't experienced themselves. But that's not the case for you. With as you went into your background in our interview last year, your experience as a fixer in journalism, going seeing the Rohingya camps, reporting on the military atrocities over the 2010s, in documenting human rights abuses and other things, meeting victims as well, and learning about the atrocities soon after they took place and trying to report on them. You had ample experience of all kinds, of reading, of testimonials, of interviews, of actually site visits, of helping to compile reports or articles. So you're quite different from many other people that this was thrust upon. You had some level of experience of knowing the very bad things that your country's military has done to minorities throughout the country. And so I'm just curious what it's been like for you to call upon this experience and this knowledge that you had before the coup. So in some sense, you know what they're capable of very well in extraordinary detail, and you know that this same brutality and fear and terror is coming now to the cities and the Bamar population. And as it comes, you're seeing parallels of what you've been reporting and documenting for years. But the difference is that in those previous years, there was some degree, and you acknowledge this in your past interview, there was some degree of safety and privilege that you always had and that your friends and family always had to some degree, that in some of these outlying areas, they did not. And now that privilege has all but been erased. We're seeing towards the Bamar people as well as the minorities, and in the cities as well as the ethnic countryside, we're seeing the same tactics being used. So what has it been like for you, for someone who had this knowledge and experience and understanding in a professional setting and personally in terms of the people you would meet and talk to, and yet you would never face that yourself as a victim or your family and friends as a victim? Did that background help you to adjust and to understand, or was it still something of a transition, even with the intellectual understanding, to actually physically and psychologically go through that experience of being targeted and living in unsafety? How would you contrast the actual experience of being in that position from after years of documenting and knowing about it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So even though, yeah, I have a prior knowledge of the military brutalities, and I have, not that I witnessed, but I did document it, and I know how evil they can be and how um, they can be brutal. But again, before that, let me clarify. I don't want to call the name military, because military is an operations with the proper chain of commands and following the policies and protecting the people. And this is not the military. This is a groups of thugs running the country. So I would want to call their name Siddet
Hmm.
instead of giving them the legitimacy as a military.
Right.
It just, it's a Siddet. So I will start from now on.
Mhm.
I will keep calling them Siddet. That's
Okay.
the name. So yeah. So for me, like, yes, I know this. This to not. I didn't experience it myself, but I was more like secondhand, listen to the stories, and I know how much Sitek can be, like how brutal they can be. So I know that. But even so, it doesn't really help me easier with the transition. Even a person like myself who has that prior knowledge and more already expected brutality from the Sidet, it's already too much to take in, because the level and the intensity and the skill of the violation that the Sidet is doing now it's beyond human imagination. It just too much. Like, yeah, before they did that, but now it's more like a full blown, and they are clearly targeting any civilians as their enemy. The way, when you see the way they target people and when you see the way they operate, it just, they see us as some kind of enemies, complete enemies, and they want to defeat us. So that was, that was the everyday just coming, a lot of the violations and amount to the level of the full blown. It's really difficult. And also, like before, as I said, I was privileged enough when I go to the other conflict areas and I do the research, and then I can leave. And yes, let's say I do the research in Mount Daw, which is a northern Rakhine state, and then once I get back to Situate or Yangon, I am living in my, going to my hotel room, having champagne, and yeah, this happened and that happened. But this situation, when I actually be in the situation, it's totally different. And I kind of disgust myself in reflecting on what I have been before. Because when I was not in the situation myself before, even though I know there's a sense of urgency, still, like, I don't have much of the seriousness in the situation. But now when I'm actually in the situation, I really want to get things resolved, and I feel the sense of urgency, and I cannot even stand the word like research. Let's do the research or that. I was so mad. Like, no, we don't need research. We need the result. Like, do something about this. There's an elephant in the room. Let's just do it. So the difference is that before, yes, I was frustrated with the way international community or the way stakeholders engage with the human rights violation of the ethnic minority. This time, it's way more, because I'm actually in this situation. I'm way more frustrated and I was angry. And so more thing that I have is not only the tragedy, not only being sad or something, it's also having anger and also hopelessness. Because before, at least I feel like, okay, I can help something. But now that I feel like I cannot help, and I am useless and I cannot really contribute much. So it's even a person like me, it's very difficult to adjust, even though I already know the atrocity that Sita has committed. And also, personally, like the execution of the 4 activists, and 2 of them, it's personally very close to me, and especially Ujami. And he was like my father. And I know the family. I know the family members of both of them, Go Jimmy and Go Choziado. And I have known them since I was younger. And so I have never experienced that in my past experience. When I document people, most of them I may not know them when they were alive. So, but this time I have never imagined in my life that I would have to document the violation, the killing committed to people who were very, very close to me. So it's definitely something different for me. And yeah, that was the most difficult time. I would say, yeah, in the past, I would document to go to Rohingyas areas or Rakhine or Shan area. I may not necessarily know them personally. I don't know them as a person. So, but this time, a lot of the people that I'm documenting are people that I know enough to picture them as person. So that's the main difference, and that's impact me a lot. and especially for that execution that we don't see the bodies and everything, that I've been dreaming about it. I've been like about the living with hope and despair, that at one point I was low-key hoping that, oh, they are alive somewhere. And then
Hmm.
other part is that, Sita is so brutal, they're gonna
Hmm.
kill. So it's a mixed feeling and very difficult to explain how it goals, but it's completely different from my past experience documenting for the other people.
Right. Just to refresh for listeners who aren't caught up on all these details, and we did have an episode about this several episodes ago. There were 4 democracy activists that were sentenced to die, and in fact, were hanged by the Sitat. And 2 of them were very prominent democracy activists, Ko Jimmy and Zayar. One of them was active from the 1988 uprising, which was the previous major democracy movement, and the second was basically the guy who brought hip hop into Myanmar and then became a member of parliament with NLD. And as brutal and as terrible as these events have been since the coup and even before the coup in the ethnic areas, this death sentence being carried out was truly a line that was crossed in terms of using state apparatuses and sham state trials as a cover to basically commit murder with the authorization of a state. This was condemned severely all the way around. So that's just to catch our listeners up to date who might not know exactly what that case was, and definitely encourage people to listen to that episode or Google and find your own information. There are many articles about it and the leading newspapers around the world. But getting back to this execution, we don't need to talk about the wider case, which has been covered so much in our previous episode, as well as in articles that people might find online. I think going back to your relationship here, I think is what is especially important in looking at the moment, because you in your career in journalism and human rights and everything else, these were icons to you, and they were not just icons of inspiration in terms of what they were doing at a national level. They were certainly that, but they were also, as you said, they were fathers or uncles or older brothers or mentors, whatever words you want to use, in terms of how they guided you and taught you things um, that created a real tenderness in who these were as humans and as people, and knowing their families. And so coming back down to that level, I know this is I'm hesitant and careful because I don't want to say anything or ask anything of you that would trigger you, and I definitely invite you to not comment on things that are a bit too hard and too raw to cover right now. But whatever you're able to describe or take on in terms of what it was like for you personally to go through the process of them being arrested, being sentenced, not knowing if this would actually be carried out, or if it would be commuted or something else in some way, and then seeing, and then the event unfolding and the aftermath of that, just whatever you feel comfortable being able to take on, because I understand this is an extremely difficult topic.
Yeah, it is actually a very extremely difficult subject for me to talk about, but I also feel like it is important for um, their story for the process to be shared, because all of us, including the family members, they're very strong, by the way, the family member, the wife, very strong human being, like they military killing is to put the fear on us, and they wanted us to stop working and stop fighting for the family, especially the mothers and wife. All these women, these incredible women, they keep us they told us to keep moving, and they told us to they were given a guidance that tell us to keep loving each other, keep resisting, and keep consolidating. So the message was very powerful. So to honor them, and also the sacrifice of the activists, themselves, not the sacrifice are not to be in vain. We need to talk about this, and as much as it is difficult for me, that this need to be the story needs to be spread, and the world need to know that this is just the pure murder, and this is the extrajudicial killing of the activists behind the sit debt, and this is the evidence that will be served at one point in the court. This is a this is a sit debt and me online openly committing. This is the clearest evidence that they commit the crime against humanity and doing the extrajudicial killing. And also the process of killing itself, it's very inhumane, I would say. That was after, so the going back to the situation was that they were arrested for being accused that they involved in the incitement of violence and again targeting against the security outposts. So they were arrested and they couldn't meet their family member. The family members and their lawyers couldn't meet them for the whole 8 months that they were arrested. And so family members and the lawyers or none of us know exactly where they were, and then they were given the death sentence by the sit debt, and then by the regime, and then we couldn't meet and for like 8 months, and then after that 8 months, one evening they came to the home of the family members and they told the family members that they can meet, that come and meet them at the prison at 6 p.m. in the evening, and it's on Friday, and then you can have a video call with them. So they could meet. The family member could meet the activists over the video call with the presence of the prison official, and one of the person who got executed, he couldn't even meet his family because his wife is also arrested and was also in prison in another town, and the three people, but the mothers and their sister want and meet them in the prison. And so the family member keep asking them that if they will be executed, is that why they were meeting them? And then the prison official told them that it wasn't the case. They said that they would inform if they will actually be executed. So everyone thought that, oh yeah, they will be, they have a chance to meet them again, and then they will be like, even the person who will to be executed, they have no idea or awareness that they will be executed the next morning, because they were asking, according to the testimony of the family member and the video interview of the family member, these people told the family members to bring some stuff that they needed for the next time visit. For example, like Go thought the rapper, he asked his mom to bring the English dictionaries and the reading glasses, etc. And the other person asked for the toothpaste and toothbrush and the shoes and the slippers, something like that. They've been asking. So it showed that they have no idea they will be executed the next day. And so we were kind of relieved that when we could see them, we were like, okay, yeah. The family were also relieved that we could see them, like, okay, at least they're still alive, and there's a chance that they may be seeing them again in the next visit and something. So the hope were up that, oh yeah, we will be seeing them again and they're not going to be executed, and we feel positive about it we, like the family member and us who were closer, we were kind of positive about this. This is a good thing. This is a good sign, even though they cannot meet the lawyers, because the reason that they couldn't meet the lawyer, that's why they couldn't really appeal for the execution order. And so the sitter has been tricking away, and they even tricked the family member to come and meet, and just to show off that they have done the fair trial and they follow the procedure, which they didn't. They just fake it. They just bring the family member and they brought the hope up for everybody. And then the family didn't know these people were executed until Monday when the newspaper announced it. So until that time, family will have no awareness that the execution happened and how did it happen, where did it happen, and they asked for the bodies, and the prison refused to give the body back. So until now, we don't get the bodies, and we didn't get the clear answer of what happened to them. So clearly, it was an extrajudicial killing done by the Sitte, and Sitte have to take accountability for that at some point in the future, and they will be punished for that. And also the thing is, for me, like as a human level, I was ill by this behavior. It just remind me of how Nazi trying to lure the Jews into the gas chamber during the Holocaust. Like, to be short, like they will Nazi lure the Jews to be like, some Jews like, okay, you can work, if you have that capacity you can work, but we need to disinfect you, and you need to go to that chamber to disinfect you, and then you can work. So people go in there without knowing that they will be killed. And so that's very inhumane. That remind me how they carry out this execution. That remind me so much of the Holocaust, and that shocked me, the evilness of how human can be. If they needed to kill, they should just kill it, but they shouldn't lure and hopes up for the family member and themselves, and then living with this kind of hope and despair is extremely inhumane. And it's exactly how Nazi did it to the Jew during the Holocaust. So Sitte have to be removed from the political space, not only because they are the dictator. As a human being, as they shouldn't exist. This kind of human being, the society should not accept them at all. So they should be held accountability for their action. And that's why Myanmar people needs to be supported, needs to be helped.
Right. Yeah, and that's bringing another World War II analogy here to back to the horrors that happened during the war, and that people in Myanmar are currently confronting, just trying to grasp for some parallel that our listeners would have a collective and shared understanding to be able to describe just some inkling of how truly awful it is there. And I think that's a good segue into looking at what you've already referenced several times on this call, is your friends that are in the jungle. And your friends in the jungle are part of a much, much wider, I don't know if anyone knows the numbers. I'd be curious to hear if you have any estimate or approximation of what numbers we're looking at. But more important, just on the level of what happened in terms of the transition from nonviolent protests, which is basically when we talked last time. We spoke just months after the coup developed, and at that point there were large nonviolent protests that were going on in the streets and that were showing resistance and nonviolent resistance at many levels. And there was a hope among many people, probably not all, probably not someone like you who had the knowledge and experience of who this enemy was, but for many there was a hope that there could be a sense of a shared humanity, of a civil disobedience, of a way to be able to communicate one's noncompliance. And there were masses everywhere in solidarity that were appearing on the streets, almost like a carnival or festival flair at the beginning. And when the military cracked down, it was awful. It was just awful. It was shooting people in the head on the streets, beating people to death in broad daylight, and abducting people and locking them away in the prisons, and just on, just terrible incidences that happened that made it no longer safe for people to go out in any numbers. And that then transitioned into people realizing that they had a choice to make of how or if they wanted to continue that resistance and what ways they could. And many of them at that point chose to seek a way of armed resistance and to go to the ethnic camps to be trained and to found these local PDF groups, the People's Defense Forces, along with other kinds of resistance units. And many of these resistance groups are now still continuing the same struggle to seek their freedom, but to do it through other means because the nonviolent way has been closed off in many ways. Not entirely, of course. The CDM, civil disobedience movement of people not going to offices, still is in effect, and there are other ways as well. But this alone, people began to realize when you're facing this evil of the sit-dat and basically what amounts to a fascist society, it's going to be very hard to find a shared humanity through any kind of civil discourse. And so other means are going to have to be necessary in order to try to uproot this oppression that's going on. And so that's more of a general overview for listeners that might be tuning in and out of the Myanmar conflict and catching us up to date on when we spoke last. Maybe you could take over from there and fill in anything you'd like to add about what that transition has been like to the formation of some of the armed resistance units, and any thoughts or opinions or perspectives you might want to share that might be new or a different way of looking at things for our audience.
Yes. So going back, we have. So I will be doing a quick overview of the movement itself. So many of you may see this woman dancing in front of the parliament, like when there was a coup happening at the background. That's a portrayal of what our life looks like the day before the 1st of February. We just slept in, the next day, boom, there was a coup, and we have no idea. We were very much like this woman dancing with the background of the coup, because that's pretty much the accurate picture of what happened that time. And then, as always, we will like come out on the street, and people started doing the nonviolence resistance. Like we started banging pots and pan, which is at 8 p.m. every night, which lasted for many months. Even under the situation was very difficult. People never failed to bang pots and pan at 8 p.m. every night, because the idea is to kick the evil out. Like it's a very traditional way of thinking, like kick the evil out of the neighborhood. You have to bend the pots and pans so that the evil is going to go away. So that's one form of the very, very first form of the civil disobedience movement, and followed by the government officers walk out of the office. And pretty much, I think, according to some data by the people who are working with the civil disobedience movement, they are about 80% of the government staff walk out of the office, and later followed by the military soldier and the other security forces. They also walk out of the office, walk out of their barrack, and they join the civil disobedience movement. So that was the beginning, and then people started having the protest. Street protest has been very vibrant and very dynamic and very creative. Like you can see some videos that young people were dancing in flash mob in different form. At the beginning, it was more as a festival than the actual protest, because we were there, and as much as it was dangerous, but also it was kind of fun, that thinking about it, because it was like, even when the military started shooting the protester with the rubber bullet, it was, those days were kind of like it's stupid, it's silly to think that way, but also funny. It's kind of like hide and seek game. So the protester, mostly young people, they would go to they call it a battle zone. Like there was some zone that they go there, and people go there before 9 p.m. and they would dress up like like cover them with the shoes and like shields and goggles and everything, because they want to stay away from them tear gas and rubber bullets and everything. So they will be ready by 9 p.m. and all like the shield level and normal protesters and everything, and they have their own way of protection. And then after 9 p.m., the soldier or the security forces would come, and then they will shoot them, and they will shoot the protester, and the protester going to be ran away into the neighborhood. And in my neighborhood, like in my mom's neighborhood, the older people will be the older generation people will be waiting downstairs with a bucket of water and tower and loads of Coca-Cola bottles, because Coca-Cola help reduce. I heard in the US you use the milk during the George Floyd protest, like when the tear gas happened. But for us, we use the Coca-Cola, so to wash them off, and we have the medics and everything. So it was scary at that moment, but also kind of fun in a way. Like people were coming, like the mothers or the elderly people would grab the young people, like take off stuff and like, okay, let's wash off your face and bring them into their homes. Like my mom, like she brought a lot of young people, keep in her homes and all other houses as well. Like we lock our doors, like the apartment building, so that the soldier cannot come in, and we just hide. So it was more like hide and seek game. And then when the protester come into your home, you're there. My mom and my aunt, they were just they became pro. That I visited them one time, and then they were like, when the protester coming with the shields and everything, they were making like how they undress the fashion behind the fashion show. Like if one person take off the goggle, one person take off the shield and hiding and and they automatically change it into the home clothes, so that even if the soldier come, they can say like, oh no, this is my nephew, da da da. So that's what they wanted to do. And my mom's always cook the noodle, a really big bowl of noodle every day, because she wanted to feed the kids. So all the other people do different things. Like you will get um, food or other kinds of support. So I see that love, that is important, that I want to highlight. So when I tell the story about Myanmar, I don't want to talk about the language of tragedy, about people. We deserve to live, because we are just like you guys. We are just like other people. And look at how much we love each other, how much, even in the middle, even though we know that there are a lot of risks involved, people were united against the regime, and people were helping each other, people were supporting each other. Strangers, love between strangers, kindness between strangers, solidarity between strangers. That is very important, and I want to keep that spirit alive. So that's all form of nonviolence, civil disobedience movement that counts. And so I want to highlight it here because that's very important for us. But anyway, so this is how we were at the beginning. And also it was like the soldier would come from 9 to 6, and there would be more like a battle going back and forth. And then after 6, they go back to barrack and we all go back home. And it was like, and we will be trapped at home, and strangers home, we can run into it, and they would chain our dresses and everything. And then that was the beginning of it, and it was more like an office work. And they, after 6 p.m., we just like bye bye, and people go to the beer stations or like bars or something, just hanging out. But it doesn't really discount how scary the situation is. Just another reality of it. And so it was the beginning of this. And later on, we couldn't really do that anymore, because military that is targeting more and more, and they also use the real bullet, the live round, and shoot to the head. Okay? And then that creates more and more fear among the people. And they also do the collateral punishment, like if you keep your the protester in your home, they will confiscate that home, or they will arrest the family member that take care of those people. So more and more people, the public space is shrinking, and people will like, they have their own risk and let's go back. And also younger people, they cannot live in the city anymore, they cannot live at home anymore, so they have to leave to the jungle. And then the situation is that even if they wanted to come back, military and also your neighbor, they also do like a neighbor watch system, and we call it the land, like informant. You don't know who they are. They are like, they can be like your friends, but they are in your neighbors, but they can report to the military, and then the military is gonna go
Mhm.
after the whole family. So younger people, even if they wanted to come back, they don't want to join the resistance, there is no other option. Um, it was completely a jungle situation, whether you protect yourself or you got killed. So that was a situation, was very much like jungle law situation. So that forces young people more into the
Mhm.
jungle, and then armed resistance became the option for many young people, many of my friends, to do that because they cannot come back home. So since then, the movement have more into the arms resistance and more into the form of violence. But at the same time, in the city, the civil disobedience continue until today. A lot of people don't go back to office, and the government operation, the regime operation, is almost stopped. And also people have been boycotting businesses associated with the sit and all that kind of thing, and street protests and everything happen. But the street protests are also more and more dangerous because military would the sit I keep military the sit would use the ran over the young protester, and there were also incidents that they use excessive force, and that leads many young people, some young people running, jumping off of the road, off the roof, and a lot of incidents happen. So, but the non-violence protests, the space is getting shrink because military is
Yeah.
brutally targeting the people who are not holding any arms, and they will accuse them of involving in the armed resistance. And at the same time, we have a we are the country with a civil war, one of the longest civil war in the world. But this time it's different, that we have a full-blown civil war. People who have never seen arms or guns before, they started holding guns and fighting back. And it's the numbers that I'm saying is millions of young people who
Goodness.
are supposed to be in school, who are supposed to be at work, who are supposed to be enjoying their life at the bar or club,
Yeah.
whatever. But now they have to hold on and live in the jungle, and that's the situation. It is very much like Ukraine and Russia's war, but the only difference is that Russians and Ukraine war is clear that it is a foreign invasion, and for us
Mhm.
the same pattern. But it was by our own sit killing our own people with our tax
Mhm.
money, and they are also using the airstrikes against
Mm.
the
Mhm.
population. So and also they do exactly how Russia do it to Ukraine, and for us it's more like Ukraine civilian, like all the civilian raise the fund together and support each other and fighting against the brutal, nasty, thug sit-down. So that we are talking about the imbalance warfare, and this is not the political crisis. A lot of the international government and the sit-at apologists, they like to downgrade our crisis as the political crisis. But this definitely is not the political crisis. This is the humanitarian crisis. We are dealing with the fascist thug sit-at who doesn't care anything about
Mm.
any civilians. So I would like to, this is an overview of the situation.
Yeah, right. Thank you for that. And I think it's worth examining this development of what's come to be the coalition of armed resistance, whether it's EAOs, the ethnic armed organizations, or whether it's PDFs. the People's Defense Forces, and some ways in which they collaborate and cooperate in their various operations, and then of course where the NUG comes in. I think it's worth examining this in a bit more detail, especially for the audience who hasn't been following it so closely, because one of the things we've seen in this transition is that for months and months after the coup, you had the democracy activists requesting, pleading for help of any kind, anything from R2P, ASEAN, UN, US, EU, just anything that any group or organization or body that would substantively come to be able to offer some kind of assistance beyond just the typical grave concerns and deep condolences and whatever else. And really nothing came. And then when it was no longer possible to seek these nonviolent means of resistance and even of protecting oneself and one's community, and there became some form of greater defensive units that were protecting their communities, you started to see commentaries of, oh, violence on both sides, and we want to see both of them be able to talk and work it out, and that condemnation of this will just make things worse, and you need to be more patient, and everything else. And in some degree, I guess, if you want to make excuses for them or try to understand that side, for those that aren't following it so closely, you could say that that one might just have a general nonviolent attitude and not wanting to encourage violence in any forms, although it does come across as somewhat tone deaf and not really respectfully or accurately charting the trajectory and development of what has happened to this point, and at its worst comes out as just extraordinarily hypocritical and misunderstanding really all the efforts and the pleading for outside support that never materialized. And this ended up being somewhat of a last resort. And yet still, we see either overtly stated explicitly or something more implicit that is going back to this both sides argument. Both sides need to be able to tone down and to come back to the table and to try different methods. And to me, this has come across as just extraordinarily disrespectful and a real slap in the face for not really understanding how we got here and just trying to give these platitudes from a position of privilege and safety without really any regard for what people have been striving for so long, and where they're at now, because there was really no outside support or other options that were given to them.
Yes, that's a good point. I really want to address that, because first I want to say, like, personally, I don't support any violence. I am not a violence person, and also I don't like war. I have seen it. I have worked in there, and I was one of the person who were when the movement was at the trajectory. I was one of the person who keep saying, like, hey, try in every possible way not to go to the war, because war is not just like in Marvel movie. Okay, let's come and fight and, like, oh yes, happy ending. That's not how the war works. Once the conflict started, it's very difficult for us to get out of it, and there is consequences of it: mental, psychological, physical, and a lot of things involved in the post-war, and a lot of grievances, and that can also create another conflict. So I am personally opposing the idea of war. And ideally, a lot of my friends who are also joining the armed forces, they wanted to avoid war. Like, ideally, myself and people that I've been talking to, my friends, ideally, we want everybody to go home and get a good rest and get a good time with their family member and eat with the full stomach, including the sit-dead soldier. We are fighting not because we hate them or anything. They are also the military soldier. The sit-dead soldier needs to understand that they are also the victim in the system. We are fighting this for the freedom of everyone. including them. So ideally, I want everyone to go home, and I want to have my own life. I want to chill. I want to, I want to hang. I want to, have a love life. I want to be with my partner, and I want to with my family, and I want to eat well, sleep well, without necessarily thinking to talk about this violence or weapons or something, because that's not what we sign up for. And I have never imagined in my life I would talk about the arms and like weapons, and I would never imagine that my friends would be talking about weapons or anything, because that's not what we sign up for. That's not who we are. Growing up in a military dictatorship, being arrested or being killed, it's not something new to us. We know that this is our destiny one way or another. But seeing my friends holding guns and have to kill, it's really heartbreaking things for me. I still cannot process it, to be honest, until today, even though I accept it as a reality. But on the other hand, we are fighting against the sit-down that is extremely brutal. So there's an argument. A lot of people say, "Oh yeah, the resistance movement also do the bad things, and both sides are wrong." But the level and intensity of the violence committed by the military, the sit-down, and the non-state actor cannot be equated. It's beyond. I'm not saying that the resistance movement have never done any violation. We also have an incident. We also have a document that there was some violation that they commit. But we are talking about the sit-down that burn people alive, that burn the whole village, that rape, and that use rape as a weapons of war, that confiscate the public thing, and that humiliate people before they kill. They're not just killing, they will also telling how they're enjoying. There was some video testimony of the soldier who defected from the sit-down. Like they were saying like how they have done certain commitment. So we are talking about the sit-down that is using the brutality, and that is getting impunity from whatever brutalities that they are doing, and they are doing the retaliation, killing as a retaliation and everything. So I want to say, for the people who are any narrative that is like, okay, both sides is wrong, it can never be the same. You can never equate the level and intensity of the sit-down with any other actors, because sit-down has a resource to use the state resources, and they can use the airplane, and they are using the airstrikes on school children who are 5 years, the school of the primary children, hospital, and that's what they have been doing. And we are dealing with the pure evil here. So for the resistance movement, resistance people, yes, I'm not denying that, oh no, there's no chance that they wouldn't commit. They do, because this is a warfare, and there's also the warfare has a collateral damage. But on the ground, some group, what they are doing is also, I'm been encouraging them to document their own abuses as well, so that the resistant people also have to take accountability at the end of the revolution. I don't think just because we are the revolutionary, just because they are that, they shouldn't get impunity from the violation. Because if we do, that's not what we are hoping for. We are fighting the culture of impunity of the sit-down. So we trying to make sure that we don't commit the same thing. So we wanted to win, and I've been telling advocating for the people in the movement, and also some leaders that come across, they have been they have been saying about the responsible resistance. They want to win. They want to win the war, but how to win the war is more necessary. They understand that, and they are developing the accountability mechanisms so that they can take accountability. They should take accountability at the end of the revolution, and meanwhile they should also document their wrongdoing, and at the end we will do it, because this is a revolution and we need to be aware in every process. The victory with dignity is very important for us, and also some leaders are very aware of it, and some leaders are talking about the victory with dignity, the victory with responsibility, because we have rights not to be an evil, we have rights not to be a perpetrator, and also we are trying to change the system. We are not really the people, they are trying to change the system, the resistant people, and they are also trying to give a chance for the sit-at soldier to get out of the military. So because this is the sit-at is the root cause of all the violation in the country. So this is an elephant in the room, and we need to address about it, and we need to address the effective way of taking it out. Otherwise, our tragedy is gonna continue. It's been forever since the first coup, since before we were born, and we want our generation to be the last generation to face the atrocity and the brutality by the military. So we need to understand we are the resistant movement. The resistant people are also trying to do the victory with dignity. And before, if there are more grievance, and if military started doing more and more extrajudicial and inhumane and undignified and just way of winning the war, things can be into wrong direction. At this stage, things are not in that wrong direction, even though the resistance movement are holding on. So that's why they need to be supported, and that's why elephant in the room needs to be removed from power.
And this elephant in the room, this is, as we've established here, this is an entrenched evil that has been oppressing and exploiting for generations, and that we've already compared to the Nazis during the Holocaust. So the question for those young people that have joined these resistance forces, how can they simultaneously try to confront and uproot this entrenched evil while also managing and trying to hold on to their own humanity? This is a very sensitive and careful dynamic, and I'm sure you've had some conversations and some perspective on how people have tried to hold this dynamic. So what have you learned, or what have you seen about how those resistance fighters are trying to balance and honor this tension and this sensitive dynamic?
Yes. Here I like to add on, like, the Sit-at is a genocidal regime. They committed the genocide against the Rohingya
Right.
population. So the war definitely have to take care of it. Have to make sure that they hold accountability. And for the movement, the resistance movement, I cannot say for the broader people, but some people that I've been interact with, still, it's a very dangerous game that they are playing. The dangerous not in a way of not only physical way, because it's so dangerous to. It's a very risky game that they don't want to lose. They're trying really hard not to lose their humanity, because that's very difficult. Because when you have a grievances, when you see people got killed, your family got killed, targeted people you love, and the whole village is bent down, and you have seen all this thing, and especially when you're holding arms, weapons, holding weapons can give you another level of power, and things can go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But these people, I'm to be honest, I'm some people that I'm interact with, I'm very impressed with how they have been still balancing their humanity with the
Mm.
with their duty as a resistant fighter. So the baseline for them is that, my understanding, according to them, is that it's not just about winning the war. They also care about how do they win the war. Like they it just like how do they win the war? Like yes, they let's say like they have to kill the enemy because that's the war tactic, but they don't they respect the dignity of the people even with their enemy. Like they don't humiliate or they don't um, target their sexual orientations or other form of human indignifying way. And so they are very careful about the process. Some leaders, like they are very careful about the process of how they do the operation, and they are trying to follow the international law, and they are trying to follow the rule of war. But yes, there are some cases that are things are out of control. That needs to be that these resistant movement needs to hold accountability. But that's a different issue. That shouldn't be equated as that. Okay, this one is wrong, this one is wrong. That's why both are wrong. That's not a clear logic. Those things come separately. The resistant movement, if they when they do the violation, they also have to take accountability. But also the sit-det accountability is the sit-det accountability. These are two different things that need to be addressed separately. But for this, balance in the humanity and while holding the guns is it's an extremely difficult job, which they are still holding. But for me also, like that as a human myself, as a seen grievance, even though I'm coming from the human rights background, sometimes I admit that I also have that evil thoughts, like, okay, yeah, the grievance is so long and I just feel like I was so angry at them. But again, what the military want is how the dictatorship would work. It's to put us fear, and they want to press us down from the human level. So for me, the resilient, it's go beyond the evilness of it. And to do that, we need to love more. We need to care more. We need to be more kind. So only then we can see the light. The freedom is within. Physical freedom, yes, they can control the physical freedom, but the mental freedom is on us. So we people helping each other and people supporting each other, people loving each other. Those are the things the sit-det cannot point at guns to our head, and like they cannot tell us, no, you cannot do this. For me, like I am when I am more like trying to hold the little candles that I have, which is my humanity, and and me and a few other people around me are protecting our own candlelights of humanity, not to be faded away by the brutality of the regime, of the dictatorship regime. So how they have been doing is we are just trying to humor. Humor is a way of coping it, and also love and art. Those are all things combined for them. But sometimes, yeah, the light is fading, but sometimes the light is more shining. But still, there is a hope. Yes, because the darkness is very big, the candlelights are very little, but these candlelights deserve to shine, and we deserve to live. Is we shouldn't be overshadowed by the fear of the brutality of the sit-det.
Right. As we're looking at this conflict between the armed resistance groups, as well as the EAOs, the ethnic armed organizations, and the sit-det, I'm wondering just tactically if you know how things are going. I think to put it crudely, are we winning?
Yes, I will say within my knowledge, I do not know all comprehensive, analysis of the ground of the dynamic. But on the outset, it's this is the first time ever in the history of Myanmar that the most united ever in the all the arms group, not all, like almost all the arms group coming together, and also young people who are newly trained, young guerrilla fighter, they all come together, and also with the majority Burma politicians and all come together. This is like we have never been that united in the history of Myanmar. So that's one thing. And also in term of winning, I I cannot necessarily say that we are winning, but we have a chance to win. Or I can say that military, I'm confident that the SIDEC cannot win at all. For given the circumstances that these newly trained fighters, even though they are pretty new, we have been hearing seeing the victories in certain areas, and mostly in the rural areas of different part of the country. Like for example, like the Middle Burma, traditionally they have no arms conflict before, but and now there's armed conflict over there. And in most of the, according to the data that we have been receiving, most of the village area, they could control the territory and administration for a certain period. But it's not like the solid control. My understanding is that it's more like because military is using the SIDA is using the airstrike. So whenever there's an airstrike, they have to go. So and in major city, the SIDA is still in control, but other area they have been gaining the control. So if you look at this, these young fighter have been trained. They were not holding arms at all. They may have never seen arms in their life until the February 1st of 2021. And now how much victory they have carried out, and that in terms of the control and in the certain areas. And also given that the military soldiers are also leaving the military, the SIDET soldier are leaving the SIDET and either joining the resistance forces or they stay out of it. So those are the victory from the people's side. So at the beginning, yes, like you said, some political scientists or conflict analysts, they were considering like there is no way the people can win over the heavily equipped SIDET that they have, because they have airstrike and they have manpower, they have technologies and everything. That's what the analysts think at the beginning of the violence conflict, which makes sense, because if you compare the history, and also if you social political science, mostly when you look at the data, if you do the analysis based on the given data, it makes sense for them to make this analysis at the beginning. But now you may also hear more and more people shifting their narrative that, oh, actually military is losing, and it's because it's a people solidarity and people determinations in how much they wanted to end the dictatorship in the country. And that's very important, because human mindset is something that you can never put it into data. You can never make an analysis, because you can never really measure the grievances and enthusiasm and how much desire people wanted to free from this brutal SIDET. So at the end of the day, this mindset will be the one determination of the war. So I am not gonna say that we are winning, but we are on the way of winning. And also winning, the reason why it got delayed more is that the resistance fighter and the ethnic arms organization, they are very much focused on the responsible resistance, and they are still focused on the victory of dignity. If they have done like how the military did, it they may have a better chance in winning, but still they don't want to do that because they know where the military family live. They know where to attack. They know the family members and something, but they are thinking it's as a dignifying warfare, and that's why they are going to the conventional warfare. So because of that, at the end of the day, it's not the weaponaries, it's not the airstrikes that will determine who's going to win the war. It's about the people determination and how much people wanted to free. So those are the determination that it's stronger in the side of people, whereas military, they don't really have the this kind of combined force, because the whole time in the past year, people join the military are more for their economic benefits and for the other career opportunities, rather than to actually to protect the country, or rather than to actually take care of the, rather than having a spirit of camaraderie. Like in the many conflict area, we have been we have heard in the report that the military, the sit-dep people, they don't even carry their own comrades body. They
Mhm.
don't have that comradeship.
Mhm.
They are opportunists, they
Mhm.
are coward, and they have no combined force. Thus, for the sit-dep soldier, there is no actual reason to fight against its enemy other than protecting the interests of the leaders, of its own leader. Whereas for people individually, it's very important about our individual freedom and safety and security. So people wanted to be free, people wanted to be safe, people wanted to be secure, and that's why they know that as far as they don't push the elephant out of the room, their life will not be purely free, secure, or safe. So that's what people have more. That people have a reason to risk their life, fight for it, whereas military don't have that ground value. So I think the for the fighting, it's more about the resistance and resilience, how much you can resilient, and people have more resilience, and so we are more on the winning path, as opposed to the sit where a lot of them flee when they have an opportunity.
Right, right. So this is examining the forces within the country in the context of what's going on there to widen the scope and to look at what conditions could support the democracy movement from outside the country. I'm wondering what you think of that, with the caveat that we're trying to stay within the reasonable and actual. Of course, one can say, and one hoped this at the beginning, that UN peacekeeper forces would come, that the US would come in force, that there would be drone strikes or whatnot. That has not come close to happening. And that is probably not in the actual reality of taking place. So, within the actual reality of what the outside world might be inclined to do and might actually do that would be of tremendous support for the democracy movement, or even what things are in place or under consideration now, how would you say that the conditions for the democracy movement could be made better by practical, reasonable actions that could take place by outside actors?
Yes. So it was in the I do not believe the idea that outside forces can come and save us. This is our issues and this is our fight, and we have to fight for our own freedom. Other There is no supreme saviors. to save us. We have to fight for our own. So that's what I believe in. In terms of the international, I know it is a tricky subject. Like, it's unrealistic that other country would give the weapon support to the military support to the resistant movement. But it's not that it never happened. We have a history that the U.S. has one time backed the military coup of the 1962. So when I say like the foreign country should help, the U.S. should help, it's not that asking them to like save us. I was telling them to take responsibility of the mess that they have done in our country before. So what the international people can do is that I know that foreign country may not want to get involved in the other country military affairs, but we have a foreign reserve money that are frozen in the U.S. and other country. So one, like, recognize the people, push for your government to recognize the civilian government that is appointed by the people. Give them the legitimacy, and then unfreeze. You can push for your policymaker and your government to unfreeze the foreign reserve money and let the civilian elected government to accept those money. And also you can pressure and advocate your policymaker to put sanction on the Myanmar oil and gas sector, because that is the major source of income for the SITET to buying the weapons, mostly from weapons and aircraft, mostly from Russia and its allies. So the money is also going to Russia. So now that we have Burma Ed, which is already passed at the House in the U.S. in the House, but also in the Senate, it's still not processing. So you can approach your policy makers and your representative and push for them to move along with this Burma Ed, which will have a broader accountability mechanism on Myanmar and on the SITET. And other things that you can do is raise awareness about Myanmar, about us. And you can support, if you have any friend, sometimes, moral support is also important. We don't want people to forget us. We are like human. We know that this is our own fight, and we need your support in solidarity with us. Do not stop from sympathy. Just act on it. Reach out to any of your friends, and they may need help, financial help or other moral help. Reach out to them and support them, and read news about Myanmar and trying to learn the situation and talks about us. Giving and join in our campaign, and make sure your representative or your government cares about Myanmar, and rather than pushing Myanmar issue as a volleyball. So those are the things I want to request the international public to to work together with us, because we are just like you guys, and whatever happened in our country, it can happen to you at any point. And this is a threat to democracy. So a threat to democracy in our country can be a threat to democracy in your country when your government don't act on it. So push for your representative, push for your government to take care of it. This is beyond the political strife of brown people in Southeast Asia, in a country of Southeast Asia. It's broader than that. We are fighting for the democracy, and we are not the victim, and we are telling you to join us in this fight together. So that we all can live in a society where fascists and dictatorship cannot have a space. So, that's those are the things that I want to tell. And even if you're going to do anything, just join our campaign and talk about us. Do not forget us, because hope is the only one that's going to drive us to continue this journey. But we are not asking you to save us. This is our fight, and we're gonna fight towards the end. But please support in any way you can to us. Small things matters. And I just want to, I just like to share the language of love and language of solidarity. That's it. That's the whole point. I'm not here to venting about our tragedies and look how pathetic we are. That's not the whole point. That's not the point. That's more like, look at how we survive in these hardships. That's why we deserve to live. That's why we should be helped. We should be supported by our friends and whoever care about us.
Thank you. Those are really powerful words to end by. A lot for us to reflect on, and really, really grateful that you were able to talk to us after a year and update us about things. And your voice is so meaningful and important at this time to be able to get this insight and this window into what's happening and how people are feeling, and some really good points for all of us to reflect on and consider. So thanks again for that.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Have a good day.
Many listeners know that in addition to running these podcast episodes, we also run a nonprofit, Better Burma, which carries out humanitarian projects across Myanmar. While we regularly post about current needs and proposals from groups on the ground, we also handle emergency requests, often in matters that are quite literally life or death. When those urgent requests come in, we have no time to conduct targeted fundraisers, as these funds are often needed within hours. So please consider helping us to maintain this emergency fund. We want to stress that literally any amount you can give allows us to respond more flexibly and effectively when disaster strikes. If you would like to join in our mission to support those in Myanmar who are being impacted by the military coup, we welcome your contribution in any form, currency, or transfer method. Your donation will go on to support a wide range of humanitarian and media missions, aiding those local communities who need it most. Donations are directed to such causes as the Civil Disobedience Movement, CDM, families of deceased victims, internally displaced person IDP camps, food for impoverished communities, military defection campaigns, undercover journalists, refugee camps, monasteries and nunneries, education initiatives, the purchasing of protective equipment and medical supplies, COVID relief, and more. We also make sure that our donation fund supports a diverse range of religious and ethnic groups across the country. We invite you to visit our website to learn more about past projects, as well as upcoming needs. You can give a general donation or earmark your contribution to a specific activity or project you would like to support, perhaps even something you heard about in this very episode. All of this humanitarian work is carried out by our nonprofit mission, Better Burma. Any donation you give on our Insight Myanmar website is directed towards this fund. Alternatively, you can also visit the Better Burma website, betterburma.org, and donate directly there. In either case, your donation goes to the same cause, and both websites accept credit card. You can also give via PayPal by going to paypal.me/betterburma. Additionally, we can take donations through Patreon, Venmo, GoFundMe, and Cash App. Simply search Better Burma on each platform and you'll find our account. You can also visit either website for specific links to these respective accounts or email us at info@betterburma.org. That's Better Burma, one word, spelled BETTERBURMA.org. If you would like to give it another way, please contact us. We also invite you to check out our range of handicrafts that are sourced from vulnerable artisan communities across Myanmar, available at alokacrafts.com. Any purchase will not only support these artisan communities, but also our nonprofit's wider mission. That's Aloka Crafts, spelled ALOKACRAFTS, one word, alokacrafts.com. Thank you so much for your kind consideration and support.